Hello and welcome to today's expert webinar presented by Accountants World. We're joined today by Ron Baker of the VeraSage Institute, and he'll be speaking on should we transition to a subscription-based business model. I want to thank you for joining us today. My name is Div Bensali. I'm also joined by Tom Provine. We're both in the marketing department at Accountants World. We're thrilled to have you joining us today and looking forward to Ron's presentation, our last expert webinar of the year. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you haven't used the GoToWebinar tool in a while, a couple of reminders about it. Look for the control panel to take any actions you want to, download handouts, ask questions, etc. If you don't see the control panel, look for the orange arrow, which allows you to expand or hide the panel. You can select your audio options under the audio tab. You can select phone call or computer speakers. If you select phone, it'll give you a call-in number and an access code as well. And if you have any questions for Ron, send them at any time. Make sure to click send, and then Ron will answer them during our poll breaks or at the end of today's presentation. Also, if you haven't downloaded Ron's presentation yet, it's available under the handouts tab. We do offer one CP for today's webinar, and that's based on active participation during the live presentation. Active presentation means three things. Number one, responding to all of the poll questions. Today there will be 4 poll questions in all that happen during the webinar. Number two, attending the live webinar for no less than 50 minutes. And number three, when you close out of the webinar, you'll see a post-webinar survey pop up. Make sure to submit that, answer it, and submit it. If you don't see it pop up, no worries. We'll email you a link as well. So that is the final step that's required in order to earn 1 CP credit today. We'll notify you by email within 3 business days of your CP approval. And make sure to add webinar@accountantsworld.com to your trusted email list to make sure that any emails from us about CP or webinars are actually able to come through. Speaking of webinars, I also wanted to mention briefly a webinar we just did a couple of weeks ago with Matt Vadi, CEO of ERG Payroll and HR, and he talked about how he's tripled his payroll business by including HR services as well. And many of you are offering or considering offering payroll services, but we find that fewer accountants have switched or have turned on HR services, and that's something that many clients are asking about these days. So Matt has found a foolproof way to be able to bundle together payroll and HR services, provide his clients with the value that they're looking for. Matt's coined the term HR hero, and at the same time be able to help grow your overall business as well. So we have a recording of that presentation available, and today for those of you who are attending, we can email you a link to that recording in the next few days. So if you're interested in that, or if you're not, I'm going to go ahead and launch our first poll question right now. So you should be seeing it open in front of you. And so the poll question is, please send me a link to the recorded webinar, How I Tripled My Payroll Business by Offering HR Services. So if you'd like to receive that, again, totally free. We'll send you a recording. You can share that with others in your office as well as you'd like. So please go ahead and select yes or no. And just a reminder, this is the first poll question today that is required in order to earn CP credit. So I see about 85% of you have voted so far. So let's take about 10 more seconds to go ahead and get everyone to vote here. Remember to click the submit button to make sure your vote is counted. All right, going once, going twice. Okay, great. Thanks to all of you for voting, and we'll go ahead and move on to Ron Baker. So a brief introduction about Ron before I turn it over to him. Ron is the founder of the VeraSage Institute. He's been an instructor with the California CPA Education Foundation since 1995, and he was once again voted to Accounting Today's list of top 100 most influential people in accounting for 2019. That list just came out recently. So Ron, welcome and congratulations on receiving the Accounting Today honor.
Oh, thanks, Div. Glad to be here. All right. Well, welcome everybody to what I call Value Pricing 2.0. And if you've attended prior programs from me in accountants world on value pricing or are familiar with my work, you know I've written many books on this topic. I've been preaching it since about 1994. I did it in my CPA practice in 1989 before anybody was talking about it or we knew much about it. And now I'm here to tell you about Value Pricing 2.0. And I'm just going to say up front, this is uncomfortable. This basically makes obsolete all my prior books. This is a new business model, and this is a game changer. So I want you to wrestle with this topic, as do I. It's never easy to go into a new business model, give up what we've been doing. If you've been making the transition away from hourly billing into value pricing, then you know how difficult that journey can be, how it's not easy. You make mistakes, you learn, but it's a much better outcome. This is the same type of thing. This is another transition point. And the reason we do it is because I just look out the window, folks, and I see a massive, massive economic macro trend taking over the economy. And it's indisputable and you can't ignore it. So let me explain what I mean by value pricing 2.0. If you think about the profession going back, probably to the 50s, 60s, we were doing hourly billing for the longest time, which was pricing our work pretty primarily based on the inputs. How many hours did it take, right? Then we started to move to fixed fees or fixed prices, which price the outputs. We would say, okay, Mr. Customer, here's a scope of work. We'll do your audit, your tax return, your compilation, whatever. Those are the outputs, the deliverables, and we'll put a fixed price around it. Maybe we used change orders, maybe we didn't when things got out of scope. How we determined that fixed price was probably some form of estimating the hours in advance and just putting a fixed price. And then we started to do value pricing 1.0, which was not pricing the inputs or the outputs, but was pricing the customer outcomes, or what I call transformations. And that's where you're custom tailoring a price to a particular customer. You're not pricing the services. It has nothing to do with the services. It's pricing the customer based upon the value that you're creating for them as an individual. And a lot of firms also started to begin to give 3 options as well. And so that became embedded in value pricing as well. But now value pricing 2.0 is basically the subscription model where you're not pricing the customer, you're pricing the relationship and the portfolio. Now, both of those words are critical, and you might be asking yourself, well, what's the difference between the customer and the relationship? Well, quite big, actually. And what is a portfolio? And I'll explain. I will unpack these things, but please know that pricing the relationship and the portfolio are critical components to this model. Now, what's going on that's causing this shift in the economic landscape? Why subscription? Why now? Right? And Teen Zoe, who wrote the book Subscribed and is the founder of Zora in San Francisco, which is a software-based company that runs the back office for subscription-based model businesses. So he takes care of the payments and the processing and tracks who's in, who's out, who suspends their subscription, maybe cancels it, whatever. His software does all of that. He wrote a book called Subscribe, which I highly recommend. He says in this book, in 5 years, you won't buy anything, but you'll subscribe to everything. Now, I don't agree with that. I think that's a little hyperbolic, but I will say this. I do agree with what Ann Genzer has said here. And she says in 5 years, you'll have the option of subscribing to everything, and every business will have to accommodate that fact. And more, we are seeing that this is very true. In fact, if I asked you how many subscriptions you have in your personal life, when we ask audiences this, it's easily over 5, right? You might subscribe to Sirius, Disney Plus, Netflix, Spotify. You might have a wine club you're in, or a beer of the month, or fruit of the month. There's even dog bark, box, which is a treat for your dog every month. I mean, we have all sorts of availability now to subscribe to things rather than just own them. And what's ushering in this trend? Well, first off, we technology, obviously, we just have light switch reliability. We have apps, we have one touch, buying on Amazon, all of that. We have the long tail. We can access a whole bunch of different things on a subscription basis. We have big data that can help companies tailor their offerings to us. Think about how much Amazon knows about you. And the technology also enables the reduction of transaction costs. Now, I could do a whole webinar on transaction costs, because that is basically everything it costs to own or buy a product. From the shoe leather you expend shopping around, whether that's on the web or in real life, brick and mortar stores, and how do you know the integrity of the seller? All of these. If you think about how Uber, did you ever think 5-10 years ago you'd get in a complete stranger's car, or stay in a complete stranger's home, maybe even with them in it? Well, Uber and Airbnb have made this possible, and eBay before them, right? They have rating systems, and they knock out people that don't abide by their agreements, and they have ways to detect and catch fraud and make punishments for it, and they make the payment transfer much easier. These are all transaction costs, and they're really important. And what we're seeing with a lot of different businesses entering into this space is they're reducing the transaction cost for the customer, and that's an incredible source of innovation. The other macro trend I can tell you, and this comes from McKinsey reporting and data, is the subscription e-commerce market has grown by more than 100% per year for the last 5 years. Subscription-based companies are growing 8 times faster than the S&P 500 and 5 times faster than US retail sales. Chances are, if you see a unicorn, it's based on the subscription model. And if you think about it, when we did workshops on this, we give the exercise of, why would you subscribe to a roof or a refrigerator or a drill or a guitar, a birthday party, shoes, all these different things. And when you sit down and really tease out the value proposition of why you would subscribe to, say, a refrigerator, well, there's lots of really good advantages to it. One, if the thing breaks, they just come out and replace it or fix it, right? You can get access to new models, so you don't have to wait for the latest and greatest thing. Same with a roof. Well, if the roof was solar, maybe it would make sense to subscribe to it. So we're starting to see a lot more diversity of things that we can subscribe to as consumers. So with that, I'm going to turn back to Diff and Tom for the first poll question.
Okay, sounds great. Let me go ahead and get that up here. And so folks, you should be seeing your poll question up. The question is, which pricing method does your firm primarily use? There are 5 options there. So please go ahead and select one of them, and then make sure to click the submit button so that your vote is counted. All right, and we'll take about 5 to 10 more seconds here, so please vote if you haven't already done so. Reminder, this is our second of 4 poll questions today. Going once, going twice, and we'll go ahead and close out. So around 39% said hourly billing, and then a pretty equal number said fixed price or value pricing, pricing the customer.
Okay, and 8% value pricing with options, 2% subscription. Okay, excellent. That's great. So let's talk about some of the advantages. Now, I'm not going to go through this, line item by line item, put it in slides so you can kind of see it in total and have it. But obviously, there's predictable revenue. Obviously, there's more customer lock-in, and you're increasing their switching costs. I think the subscription model indisputably produces more customer loyalty. We're not selling services in this model. You're creating lifetime annuities that far exceed their acquisition costs. The mindset, we've got to get away from the mindset that we sell services or that we sell a scope of work. Don't. And this is what I mean by the portfolio and the relationship are taking care of the customer. And we'll talk more about that. You've got incredible knowledge about our customers. I mean, if you think about what Amazon knows about us, think about what we know about our customers. We have access to their most sensitive data, their financial health. We're kind of like their general physician in that sense. We can literally do one-to-one marketing in this model, I think much easier than in even a value-based pricing model. We no longer look at the math of the moment. We shift to a long-term relationship focus. This is about the relationship. I think it's easier to attract new customers. You can obviously plan your firm's cash flow and capacity more effectively. We're moving beyond efficiencies, scope of work, project management, workflow, all the internal things we worry about, and we put more focus on possibilities to expand and create more value for our customers. If you're in a larger firm, this breaks down silos. We've been talking about the one firm model forever. Let's stop talking about my client. Let's not bombard the customer with different invoices from different sides of the firm. They get a tax invoice, they get an audit invoice. Let's make it a seamless customer experience, but it hasn't worked very well. This model breaks it down. It has to work that way because the customer is at the center of the business. It is truly a one firm model. There is no more siloed P&L. There is no more how much did the tax department make? How much did the audit department make? How much did the consulting department make? It's all one firm. It's a complete system like the human body. And consultants to the profession have been talking about this forever. This model achieves it. It forces it because it sets up the incentives correctly. You get paid automatically. There's less financing costs. You're not invoicing. You're not doing billing. You're not tracking WIP. You're not doing anything like that. And I also think it has the capacity to recession-proof your business. A couple of other interesting statistics. If a member retains membership and engagement for about a year, there's a 90% chance you'll have them as a member for life. If you think about the things you subscribe to, how many have you canceled? Now, you might have canceled a gym membership because you never went. Maybe you canceled Sirius that you got when you bought your car, but then you traded it in on a new one and figured out that, well, I've got an iPhone, I don't need Sirius anymore. But chances are, if you subscribe to something, you kind of stick with it. It becomes just part of how you operate it. It becomes ingrained into your daily life. Many of you are probably Prime Amazon members and do a lot more shopping on Amazon than you ever thought you would. And that is just going to increase. The AICPA reports that it costs 11 times more to acquire a new customer than retain an old one. But yet, we'll go out of our way to chase down new customers and spend all sorts of money, free meetings, RFPs, all sorts of time courting them, taking them to lunch. But then once they become a customer, every minute has to be billable. This makes no sense. It's never made sense to me. I think 2/3 of our marketing budget should be spent on customer retention, not acquiring new customers. The subscription model puts the value proposition into our marketing and lets us control how many customers we're ultimately going to take on. Amazon was never really about the 79 or what is it now, 119. It was really about changing people's mentality so they wouldn't shop anywhere else, according to Vijay Ravindaran, who was the former vice president of Prime. And it has really worked. I mean, the average Prime customer spends something like 8 times more with Amazon in a year than a non-Prime customer. So that's been a very successful model. Now it's a hybrid model because obviously Amazon sells physical products and we don't. So we'll talk about that. But I will also, I'll jump to the next poll question. So I'll turn it back to you, Div.
All right, sounds great. So let me go ahead and get the next poll question up here. And so this question is, have you experimented with any offerings to your customers on a subscription priced basis? Yes, no, or no, but I plan on doing so. please go ahead and select one of those three options, and then make sure to click the submit button so that your vote is counted. All right, so we've got over 80% of you have voted at this point, so let's go ahead and take another 10 seconds or so to get everybody else in place here. Please go ahead and vote by selecting one of those three options and clicking the submit button. All right, going once, going twice. Okay, so Ron, we see 53% said no, 20% said no, but I plan on doing so. 27% said yes, they have experimented with subscription model.
Oh, excellent. Great. So let me also recommend another book called The Automatic Customer by John Warrillow. And in this book, he lays out 9 subscription models. And look, this is really hard to categorize these things. There's obviously overlap, but I think he's done a really good job sorting these as best we can. I'm going to go through these, and then I'm going to tell you which ones I think best apply to accounting firms. So the first one obviously is website membership. You may be a subscriber to The Economist or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, whatever. And by the way, if you carved out the New York Times digital, they'd be a unicorn. Everybody talks about the New York Times and, it's going down, it's a financial problem. Not its subscription side. The subscription side is what's keeping it afloat. The Economist has a really good website that's subscription based. So you're probably all familiar with that model. There's also the all you can consume content. If you subscribe to Netflix or Spotify, or maybe you just signed up for Disney Plus, right? This is all you can consume. In fact, they do everything they can to keep your eyeballs on them, which is a really interesting model. They want you to spend more time with them because time invested means it's valuable, right? They find value in your offering. And how can we do that? How can we get our customers spend more time with us? It's an interesting question. And then another model obviously is the private club. Maybe you're the member of the country club, right? Or a lunch club or some type of university club, or maybe you're a member of Club 33 at Disneyland, the only place in the park you can get booze. This is obviously a pretty well-known model. There's also the front of the line model. Maybe you're a member of Clear or Peach Pass, or out here it's Fast Track in the Bay Area. This might get you in a special HOV lane at various dynamic pricing depending on the time of day and traffic patterns. But this model is obviously pretty common as well. And then there's the consumables. Maybe you're a Harry's Razor fan or Dollar Shave Club or other things on Amazon that you can just automatically reorder. And then, of course, there's the surprise box where you get, the wine of the month or the beer of the month, or there's even a stud club where you get the earring of the month, right? And I mentioned before the dog bark box, I think it is, where you get a treat for your dog. You would not believe how many people have subscribed to this. We love our pets, obviously, in the United States. The network model, where you can, net jets, you can buy a piece of an airplane, a private jet with maybe 4 or 5 others. I think Warren Buffett's invested in this. Zipcar, where you have access to a car in the city when and where you need it. And then, of course, there's the simplifier model. Now, this one intrigues me. There's 2 examples I want to share with you. One is Hassle-Free Home Services, which is a franchise across the country. And these folks will take care of that to-do list that you have in your house, all those stupid little chores you have to do on the weekend that are so annoying. Change the batteries in the smoke detectors, fix the screen, change the filters in the air conditioning unit and the heating and all that kind of stuff. $275 a month, they do it all. Go to their website, check out the list of normal things that they cover, and it will blow your mind. You'll look at some of these tasks and go, I didn't even know I was supposed to do that. Drain a half a cup of water from the hot water heater. Who knew, right? Now, the interesting about this model is they have carved out the bigger projects. So if you want a deck, if you want a bathroom remodeled, or somebody, slam through your sliding glass door and that needs to be replaced, they'll do that too. Now, let me ask you, if you subscribe to these folks, who are you going to hire to do these other bigger projects? You're going to hire them. In fact, the average hassle-free home franchise makes 50% of its revenue from the special projects that are carved out. My favorite example is the Porsche Passport. The Porsche Passport is a program that has now expanded beyond Atlanta, Georgia to, I believe, Las Vegas, San Diego, Phoenix, and don't ask me why, but Toronto. And there's two tiers, $2,000 and $3,000 a month, and you get access to various Porsche models. Now, depending on what tier you're in, that's going to dictate the models that you get access to. But for $3,000 a month, you can drive whatever model you want, and you can change as often as you want. You can say, hey, I got friends coming this weekend, I need an SUV, and they'll white glove out an SUV, pick up your old one, and take it away. And then the next week, the sun's out, you want a convertible, they'll white glove one out and pick up the SUV and take it away. Folks, they pay for everything except your gas and tolls. They pay for your insurance, the taxes, the registration, everything. Everything's covered in that $3,000. There is no mileage restriction, none. Drive as much as you want. Flip the cars as much as you want. And people ask us, well, how's this differ from a lease? It's not tied to a car. You can't even buy the car. It's a subscription. You don't own the car, but you have full use of it. And you don't have to take care of the maintenance. You don't have to take care of oil changes, tire puncture, none of that. It's all taken care of with white glove service that will drop off a loaner. And here's the thing. You're not subscribing to a car. You're subscribing to Porsche. You're subscribing to the company. And think about how much automobile companies spend to get you to rebuy a car, which a surprisingly low number of people do. It's something like 40% or something less than 40% of people buy the same brand car again. And so a lot of their marketing budget is spent towards, getting people to rebuy. And if you subscribe to Porsche, what are you going to drive for the rest of your life? In fact, here's a drop bomb statistic. 80% of the Porsche Passport subscribers are new to the brand. And just look at this customer review. You can go right to the Porsche Passport website, and there's an app, and you can read customer reviews. I just picked one because I thought it just blew my mind. The name perfectly describes how it feels to be a member, a citizen. Get the connection between citizen and passport. A citizen of Porsche enthusiasts given the opportunity to drive many miles and many models. The Porsche Passport service really sets this apart from any other brand I've been loyal to. Tell me how many CPA firms or accounting firms have a customer review that reads like that. What does that mean? I mean, I haven't seen this type of fanaticism until you study Harley Davidson, where people actually tattoo it on their body, or Disney, right? Generations go back to the park, right? In fact, at one point, something like 3/4 of the people in Walt Disney World today have been there before. This is the type of loyalty that we're talking about. This is a relationship with Porsche. This isn't about the car. It's about the relationship. And that's what I mean by pricing the relationship with the customer. So I really, truly love the Porsche Passport program. In fact, analysts project that by 2023, 50% of cars will be subscribed to. Canvas allows you to subscribe to various different cars. And just drive them worry-free. Same type of thing. Now, some of these models differ because they do have mileage restrictions, which I think is a huge mistake. I think that's a huge mistake for these car companies, and I think they're going to figure that out. What's attractive about the Porsche and some other ones is they don't have mileage restrictions and they have more models to choose from. But you're going to start to see this more and more. The other model, and the ninth model in the subscription model, is peace of mind. And this isn't from Warlow's book, my example, but my example for professional firms is the Concierge Medicine example. since 1996, when Dr. Moran started the first concierge medical practice known as MD Squared. He was the Seattle Sonics team coach. And he said, I knew my players so well. I thought, why couldn't a doctor do this in private practice? Know his players so well that he not only helps them when they're, when they have injuries, but he keeps them healthy. And that's exactly what concierge doctors do. Now, there's lots of different models in this, and again, could spend a whole webinar on just that. But bottom line is, there's over, I think now the number is over 7,500 medical concierge doctors in the United States that are showing unbelievable results for their patients, because they're not just about helping you when you're sick. They're keeping you healthy. They're proactively planning your health with screening and diet and all sorts of other things that they can do. Their patients are experiencing less hospitalizations. They as doctors are experiencing much less malpractice premiums. And here's the rub. The reason this is happening is because these doctors have realized that the average general practitioner in the United States has a panel of patients between 2,400 and 4,000. That means they have to see some 26 patients per day. And this is why you get 5 minutes with your doctor. This is not why these people went into medicine. They went into medicine to help people. And they take the honor that guarding people's health is their most sacred asset. Well, what do accountants do? We guard our customers' financial health. And we know a lot about them, just like the general practitioner, the general physician knows about his patients. And if you have too many customers, you can't adequately service them. Sure, you can do their compliance, but you can't actively plan with them. We're just not spending enough time. In fact, the number one thing that these concierge practices have found is they have to re-educate the patients to spend more time with them. They actually want the patients in their office for 2 or 3 hours at a time, because they're trying to help them with various things to stay healthy, not just to cure illnesses when they're sick. And if you look at this is just a website from a concierge practice, the benefits: develop a long-term relationship with your doctor, access your physician medical team when you need it, receive customized care, referrals to the specialist when you need that. Basically, these concierge doctors are saying, look, whatever you need that we are capable of doing under this roof is covered by your annual subscription. Now, that annual subscription varies because of the different business models, the different types of customers they're going after. Some are as cheap as a cable bill every month, $225, $300 a month. Others are really, really white glove, will even travel with you, and maybe $5,000 to $9,000 a month. So this varies tremendously, but the average is around $400 a month. Now, you can text your doctor, you have their cell phone, you can get same day appointments, they'll do office visits, they'll even come to your place of work or residence to stitch you up if you cut your hand, whatever it might be. I mean, they'll do whatever it takes, whatever they can do. And by the way, what they can do under their roof is constantly expanding. Just like we get as Prime Amazon members benefits thrown at us all the time. Oh, now you have magazine subscriptions. Oh, now you have access to audiobooks and streaming music, and of course all their video content. It's the same thing here. They're constantly expanding what they do. They offer more procedures under their roof. They may do various injections or different types of removal procedures. Some of them have MRIs or other type of x-ray machines in their office to do diagnostic testing. Others of them have pharmacies inside their offices, and they actually dispense drugs. So if they write you a prescription, you get it right there. It's included in your subscription. In other words, whatever you need. Now, obviously, you're going to have different health needs over the course of your lifetime, right? Some years you're going to be more sick than others. Some years you're probably just going to need a physical. This is the portfolio approach. This is the actuarial component to this, where we price the portfolio, just like a life insurance company knows not everybody's going to die who has life insurance, and not everybody's going to have an earthquake who has earthquake insurance. So this is what I mean by pricing the portfolio. And if you look at the different types of access, you can see what happens here. You know, in the cheapest form of concierge medicine, and there's that's normally known as direct primary care physicians, DPC, which is part of the family of concierge medicine. They usually have a panel of patients between 800 and 1200. And then there's the concierge doctors. They might have 400 to 800 patients. And then there's the premium concierge like MD Squared's premium. They're dealing with CEOs. They're dealing with probably the top 10%. But you know what? So do CPAs. You know, we're not dealing with people that just, you know, need a tax return file. We're dealing with people that have investment portfolios and have a business and have complicated tax lives and financial lives. And their panel of patients is, you know, might be between 200 and 400 patients. So right off the bat, I can tell you that if you're thinking about moving to this model, it requires two things: a lot fewer customers, because you need capacity to be able to spend more time with them, to actively map out a financial plan for their financial health. And you need to be engaged with them throughout the year. This is also what I mean about the relationship. You're really deepening the relationship. And folks, you can't do that if you're busy. You can't do that if you have thousands of customers. You can't do that if you're working 14 hours a day through tax season. You know, the last thing I want to hear from my dentist if I have a toothache is, oh yeah, Ron, we can fit you in a week. You know, you want your professionals to have capacity for when you need them, right? And we need to be the same way. We need to be proactive, and that requires fewer patients. And it probably requires a price that is 4 or 5 times greater than what you're charging now, you know, on a monthly or an annual basis. And but my argument for that is it is much easier to differentiate yourself at 30 grand a year than it is at 4 grand or 5 grand a year. You know, you can do a heck of a lot more for somebody at 30 grand a year. Now, you can't do that at the same level of number of customers that you have if you're charging them 4 grand a year. You just can't. You can't be doing thousands of tax returns in this model. So this model is not for everybody, and I'm not arguing that it is, but for those that have made the transition, and since we have 23 years of experience and empirical evidence in the medical field of doctors who have made this transition. I just talked to one last week on my radio show out of Detroit, Michigan. He's got a direct primary care practice. He said, this is what I was born to do. This is why I went into medicine, to help people, not to spend 5 minutes with them. And by the way, have you noticed that your doctor spends more time looking at the screen and typing than he does looking at you? This is because of the emergence of you know, medical health records, which have been a big disaster, by the way. And most concierge practices don't use them. They hate them. And they're a requirement of insurance companies and Medicare, not good medical procedure, at least not yet, until they're better designed. One doctor said, I've become a better typist than doctor. And reported that, you know, it took me 32 keystrokes to order a flu shot. That's absurd. And this is detracting from the relationship, the sacred relationship between the patient and the doctor. And the reason that I'm so enamored with medical analogies, and always have been, is because I think the parallels between medical doctors and what accountants do are very, very similar. There's many more similarities than not. And many lessons with both professions that are absolutely profound. And we can learn a lot from doctors that have made this transition, because right now in the United States, the demand for concierge medicine and direct primary care medicine far exceeds the supply, far exceeds the supply. Many of these concierge practices have waiting lists of customers that are dying to get in. Now, can we say that as a profession? No, because we tend to take all comers. We tend to think any dollar of revenue is a good dollar, but it's not. if you grow for the sake of growth, which is the ideology of the cancer cell, not a sustainable, profitable business, you're actually detracting how much time you can spend with any one patient. And then you're not doing as thorough of a job, and you're not really guarding their financial health on a proactive basis. So this really is an argument for less, for, I'm just going to say it, for value over volume. Value is more critical than volume in this model. And that's what we mean by the relationship. Because as Michael Hammer loves to remind us, a professional is someone who is responsible for achieving a result rather than performing a task. And so in my idea of what a concierge accounting firm would look like, and I don't care if you're a CPA, accountant, EA, bookkeeping firm, you would basically say to your customers that anything that we're capable of doing that you need is covered. Now, you could still have different options. You could say we have a bookkeeping plan, and we have a bookkeeping and tax plan. We have a bookkeeping, tax, and audit plan, or business advisory. Whatever it is, each firm's going to be different. I don't have a roadmap for your specific firm. You're going to have to experiment with this, but you could offer, and I would still advise you to offer 3 options, and try and segment your customers as best you can. The other thing that I can tell you under this model is it's much easier to implement if you're well niched. If, like I have a good friend, CPA, who does nothing but dentists. Now, he knows everything there is to know about running a dental practice from a financial standpoint, and he can handle a dentist from womb to tomb. In fact, one of the most successful ways that he markets is he goes and he gives talks to graduating dental classes in dental school. And he tells them all the ins and outs about buying a practice, buying into a practice, starting a practice, everything they're going to have to worry about: insurance, equipment, hiring people, hygienists, how that works, how the economics of a dental practice works. He knows everything about a dentist. He knows what happens when they get disabled and have to have a succession plan. He knows how to handle divorce. He knows how to handle, untimely death, buyouts, dissolving partnerships. He's seen it all. He's seen it all. So he can put all of these people in a portfolio, charge them a relatively consistent price, which again is not cheap, but cover anything they need. If they get audited, he covers it. He's there for them. He represents them. Now, not all of his customers are going to get audited every year. So again, this is the portfolio that is built into his price. So for the 1 or 2 that do get audited, it's more than covered. He's self-insuring himself. And we need to get away from the mindset of scope of work. Oh, they opened up another checking account. Oh, they've added 50 more employees. We want our customers' businesses to grow. We want to see growth. We want to see the scope of the bookkeeping or the accounting or the tax, compliance increase, because that means they're thriving. That means they're adding value. That means they're helping society. All of these things we have a vested interest in, and we shouldn't be nickel and diming them. We're there to serve them. We're there to create the transformation to help them go from where they are to where they want to be, their preferred future. And that's what Michael Hammer means by producing a result, which I call a transformation, moving the customer from where they are to where they want to be. They want to retire sooner. They want to grow their business so they get a better price when they sell it. They want to build their dream, second vacation home. They want to put their kid in Harvard, whatever it might be. We provide these transformations all the time as financial professionals. We help them plan their legacy with estate planning. And our pricing is for scope of work, for services, for tasks. We need to get away from that. Even the value pricing model still relies, I think, way too heavily on scope of work. Scope of work is meaningless in a relationship economy. You do whatever it takes. You do whatever the customer needs that you're capable of doing. Now, look, if you're not capable of doing it, you can refer it out to somebody in your network who is. I'm not suggesting that we do things that we have a due professional due care to only do those things that we're capable of. just like a concierge doctor, they're general physicians, most of them. Some of them are specialists, but most of them are generals. And if you have cancer, they're not going to sit there and treat your cancer. They're going to refer you to an oncologist. But you know what? They're going to walk over there with you and sit through the appointment, and they're going to quarterback your medical care with all the specialists that they refer you to. They're going to be in the loop. Well, guess what? We do the same thing. We work with our customers' insurance agents and their financial planners, and maybe their attorneys and their bankers. And, we're in that network too. We're just like the general physician or the general contractor, however you want to think about it. But that's what we do. So that's kind of what I mean by the relationship and the portfolio. They're not buying services from your firm. They're subscribing to your firm, whether you want to call them members, whether you want to call them citizens like Portia does, which I think is an awesome term because it does imply some responsibility. I mean, after all, the concierge doctor is laid out a health plan for you, a specific diet, and maybe some certain prescriptions you have to take. If you don't follow their advice, they are more likely to fire you. And the reason why is if you don't take their advice, if you're not serious about your health, you're going to be the worst walking advertisement for them there's ever been. And it's the same with us. If we have customers that we're constantly telling, you got to do this, you got to do that, I don't care what it is, you got to incorporate, you got to do, whatever, and they're not listening to you, are they really a customer? Or is it just a transaction? They're just buying a pair of hands. This really deepens the relationship. It forces it. It has to. It has to, because the model dictates that the customer is at the center and everything you do revolves around the customer. Now, a couple of other things I want to share with you about this is, because we're talking about pricing the portfolio, we have to get comfortable with risk. Let's stop as a profession running away from risk. And I've learned three things from actuaries who price risk for a living. They have taught me that if what you sell entails risk, you are by definition not a commodity. And what we do entails risk. We have risk. We're kind of in charge of our customers' financial lives. We file their taxes, we do their payrolls, we do their books. So we screw that up, there's consequences. It's not life and death consequences like a GP, but there's consequences. There's risk there. There's no such thing as a bad risk, just a bad premium. At the right price, of course you would cover everything that the customer may need. Of course you would. At the right price, of course you would. That's why the pricing of this is going to have to be higher. And if you're not comfortable with that, then this model is probably not for you. But I would strongly suggest, if you really sit down and think about the value that your firm adds to your customer's life, it's a lot more than you think. 99% of the mistakes we make as professionals in pricing is underpricing ourselves. We do this all the time. I see it everywhere. And this forces you to put the value first. This forces you to sell the value, to really and market the value. Marketing plays a much critical role in this model than does just mere selling. And then there's no model for pricing risk by the hour, which is another really important lesson. So really what we're talking about here is, rather than being a fireman, waiting for the phone to ring and the client's got a problem and break fix, we go out, fix it, whatever. We're fire insurance salesmen. We're trying to prevent issues before they crop up. Now that's never going to be 100% effective. There's always going to be, black swans in life, and people are going to have issues that you're going to have to deal with. But it's not just about solving their problems. It's helping them achieve a better future. We play a critical role in doing that. And our business models don't reflect it at all. That's got to change. And the subscription model and the concierge model changes that. The other thing that happens in this model, and I just put these slides in here so you could see them. I don't have, because you're all financial types and accountants, I don't have to explain a lot of this, but I just wanted to let you know that GAAP, as a generally accepted accounting principles as it's currently construed, does a really crappy job with this business model. And this is something that Teen writes about in his book Subscribed. So I kind of want to show you a new vocabulary what a true subscription business model, the new words and what their financial statements look like, because they look different. First off, you're going to get very familiar with the term MRR, which is monthly recurring revenue. Every time you sign somebody up, if you decide to price your model monthly, you may decide to price it quarterly. You may decide to price it bi-weekly. You may decide to price it semi-annually, or maybe even once a year. Now, I was surprised doing the research on concierge doctors, how many patients actually, these are the patients who said, I prefer to pay my annual subscription one time a year, at the renewal, just one time, even though it might be $6,000 or whatever. That kind of shocked me, because I, would want to maybe spread it out. Maybe you could offer a different thing. Maybe you offer a little bit of a discount if they pay it all off in 1 year. You can play with the payment terms. This model is wide open to be changed, just like value pricing is. But monthly recurring revenue, when you sign up new people, their annual contract value is obviously MRR times 12, right? And then, of course, you're going to start to really track customer acquisition costs. Now, we tend to do this anyway, all the efforts that we put into marketing, and how many customers get into the funnel, how many of those become customers, and then we can track what the average cost to acquire a customer. Keep in mind that the AICPA does say that it costs 11 times more to acquire a customer than simply retain one. The other thing that becomes very important in this model is the churn rate, which is the monthly recurring revenue at the beginning of the month divided by the amount of lost MRR during the month. Now, you can do that based on revenue. You can do that based on number of customers. We should be worrying about our churn rate anyway. Customers defect under hourly billing, they defect under fixed prices, value prices. This just puts it very front and center and actually puts it on your financial statement as well. Other metrics that are tracked under this model that maybe are non-financial, what I would call key predictive indicators that have some predictive power about whether or not a customer is going to return, are recency. When's the last time they visited? The frequency, how often do they visit? And the last one there, which I can't see, is and volume. How many articles have they read? How many services have we provided to them? Those types of things. There's other statistics that say venture capitalists tend to look at, the lifetime value. If it exceeds 3 times the cost of acquisition, that's considered, a good ratio. Most successful subscription businesses have that ratio at 8 to 1. So you can play with that, being financial types. But here is what the subscription economy, income statement looks like. Now, we all know the traditional income statement, but here's, it's tracking the annual recurring revenue. It's tracking the churn. It's obviously cost of goods sold and general admin, research and development, but it's also tracking new annual recurring revenue, and then it's ending with an ending annual recurring revenue. In other words, it's to the best of its ability, because let's face it, accounting is a historical thing, but this is at least keeping its eye on the future somewhat, right? By looking at the trends in annual recurring revenue. And so it's a little bit different model, so you'd probably have to tweak your financial presentation in order to do this. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it back to Div for our last poll question.
All right, sounds great. So I'll go ahead and launch the fourth and final poll question here. And so the question is, do you plan to implement the subscription business model? And there are 4 options there, so go ahead and select whichever one applies to you. Also, Ron, a question came in from Harold. He said, I have a couple of clients with multiple entities. How does this work in that situation? Should I have the same price for each entity or offer some sort of discount as a means to convert to this model?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think you really have to look at the portfolio, how many customers fit that mold. And if a lot of them do, then maybe you have a certain tier for people that have multiple entities. Now, I don't want you to get lost on the weeds. Don't try and limit it. Don't say up to 5 entities, and then between 5 and 10 entities, it's going to be this amount. You start doing that, you start to diminish this model, just like car companies that put mileage restrictions. you have to look at the portfolio. If you've only got a couple customers in that category, then jack up the price across the board to cover the people with multiple entities. And as you roll forward, if customers, expand and have more entities, well, bless them. That means you're helping them become, healthier and wealthier, and that's a beautiful thing. So price, that's what I mean by pricing the portfolio.
Great. Um, so I'm going to take 5 final seconds here. Folks, if you haven't voted, please go ahead and do so right away. There was another question that came in before, and I apologize. I accidentally deleted the question, so I don't remember who asked it. But the gist of it was, is the subscription model better for the company providing it than for the client? In other words, they understand the economic value for the company, but we as customers are already subscribed to a lot of subscription services that we may not necessarily need. It gets us away from saving up for purchases and putting more consideration into them. Is it a bad thing for our clients?
I don't think it is. I do realize that in the B2C world, there is a thing out there known as subscription fatigue because we have subscribed to so many different things. But I think in the B2B world where we play, um, the subscription fatigue is not an issue because yeah, they subscribe maybe to their software program or various apps they may use, T-sheets or whatever. But for this one, this is a big expenditure. Accounting is going to be a big expenditure in somebody's life no matter what. And to put it on a subscription basis really puts the relationship at the heart and gives the customer peace of mind. And I think that's incredibly valuable to customers. Insurance is a $3.3 trillion worldwide industry. And you know what it gives us as customers? Peace of mind. In fact, the psychology with insurance is beautiful because we all pay for it, usually on a monthly basis, and we love it when we don't use it. Now, is that good for us? Of course it's good because you buy insurance so you can sleep at night. It gives you a peace of mind that know you're covered, whether it's life insurance, disability insurance, earthquake insurance, extra warranty on your car, your household appliances, whatever it might be that you buy insurance for. It gives you peace of mind. It's obviously an economic good. This model fits that beautifully. So I would say the benefits to both sides are phenomenal and much greater than their current models.
All right, well put. So Ron, if it's okay with you, I'll go ahead and take back. Did you have any more slides that you wanted to present, or?
Just one
Okay,
or
great. So
two.
let me go ahead and close out here. All right, go ahead.
All right. So just some of the resources I mentioned that I think are really worth your time are the book Subscribe by Teen Zoe. You can also listen to my radio show where we interviewed Teen, who was just fascinating, founder of Zora. And I'll show you where you can get my radio show and all the shows we've done. I also recommend The Automatic Customer by John Warlow. I think it's a great book. It lays out the 9 types of subscription models. Subscription Marketing by Ann Genzer is another one if you're serious. Another really good one I like was Retention Point by Robert Scrobb. I would also encourage you to subscribe to the Subscribe newsletter that Zora Teen Zoe puts out, and also the book by Michael Munger, Tomorrow 3.0, which deals with transaction costs. That is an integral part of this that I just didn't have time to get into because it's kind of deep. But Michael Munger is a fantastic writer. He's an economist at Duke University, and I think he's pegged this exactly why. This will shed light on why you're seeing more subscriptions in the economy today than ever before. So those are the resources I'd recommend. This is how you can find me, folks. I do a radio show called The Soul of Enterprise that runs live every Friday at 1 p.m. You can also go to thesoulofenterprise.com, click on the archive page. You'll see our 270 some odd shows. We've interviewed Michael Munger on his book, Tomorrow 3.0. We've interviewed Teen Zoe. We've done a couple of other shows, part 1 and part 2, on subscription model for professional firms. You can find those shows on the archive page. And we've also talked about this in other on other shows with other guests. There are a lot of lawyers moving into this. We just interviewed a direct primary care physician from Detroit who's moving into this. Tomorrow, we're talking to a surgeon in Oklahoma who offers fixed prices for surgery at the Oklahoma Surgery Center, which is absolutely fascinating business model that's upending how we how healthcare is delivered in this country and how it's paid for. And then you can also find me at Twitter at Ronald Baker. You can also email me, and those are the books I've written up there that are basically could be obsolete. At least the pricing components of them could be obsolete if we go to this model. But I think this is great, and if that's unnerving, just this is what happens in business. It's called creative destruction, and it's represented by new business models. This is a new business model, and you're going to have to grapple with this whether you do it or not, because there are going to be firms that do it. And my bet would be the customers are going to find those firms more valuable. So folks, I hope I've given you some food for thought. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Div.
Great, thank you so much. Ron, really enjoyed your presentation today. This is definitely a departure from the value pricing talks in the past, and I can see the progression in your thinking from what you've presented before to now, and this is very, very interesting and enlightening. So thank you so much for joining us today. Folks, this was the last of our expert webinars for this year, so to all of you who've joined us for one or many of them, thank you so much. You can watch all of this year's expert webinars on demand for free. Go to 2019webinars.com. That's 2019webinars.com. And you can go in and watch all of them at any time. Share that link with other people as well if you'd like to. And finally, just want to say season's greetings and Happy New Year. Hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season. And we look forward to seeing you at more events coming up in 2020. So Ron, thanks again for your presentation today.
All right. Thanks, Div. Thanks, Tom. And thank you, everyone.